Let's introduce our next speaker. I want to invite Nivedita Murthy to speak on DevSecOps, the good, the bad, and the ugly. In the IT world and IT security space in particular, is filled with buzzwords like DevOps, SecOps, DevSecOps, CI/CD, and so on. Everyone wonders where security comes into the picture. Why should security fit into the process, and how can it, or should it, fit in at all without slowing time to market? In this presentation, Nivedita will introduce the audience to the world of DevSecOps, navigating attendees through the basics and key terminology. Next, we'll move into an exploration around the value offered by DevSecOps and the potential challenges in its implementation and common misgivings when it comes to expectations versus reality. With the real-world implementation examples, she will enable the audience in understanding around understanding advantages and disadvantages of implementing DevSecOps, and more importantly, the urgent need for its implementation in today's software-driven world. So without further ado, I want to introduce Nivedita. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.
Hi.
Thanks for the invite here. Okay, let me share my screen here. Okay, hold on. Okay. Yes. Okay, I guess everyone can see you.
Yep, we can see your screen. We can hear you. You're good to go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Nivedita Murthy. I'm a senior security consultant at Synopsys, based out of Boston, Massachusetts. I started in security due to movies and sitcoms that inspired me, starting with security operations, where I worked in network, incident, and security operations, and application security as well. I moved to vulnerability triaging, SAST, pen tests, SCRs, risk assessments, and finally into DevSecOps. I've been working on DevSecOps implementations for past 3 years now. And while I'm not working, I like to travel out and be outdoors. Yeah, 2020 didn't allow me to go places where I wanted to go, but I discovered a little bit more about Massachusetts. And while I'm traveling, I like to, take pictures, especially of landscapes. And I'm also a voracious reader. I'm hitting my target of 24 books for this year. Enough about me. So what am I going to talk about today? It's all about DevSecOps. I would like to first introduce to the whole world of DevSecOps and then explain the need, and then we move on to the good, bad, and ugly parts of it. As you can see by the name, it's an amalgamation of development activities, operation support, and security checks. It's a cultural mindset altogether. It requires coordination and sync between teams involved in the SDLC process. This energy and synergy between teams is obviously helped by automation. DevSecOps is not a quick fix or a temporary solution. It is a long-term implementation you play to gain long-term goals in ensuring an organization is able to achieve and maintain secure SDLC practices. It requires development teams to follow a standard SDLC process, waterfall or agile, and ensure they don't break the process. Well, one is actually able to easily detect if they do that. While not going too much into details about it, developers ensure that they maintain versions of their code and follow a peer review process before the code is moved to production, or like not even just production, but through various environments. Segregation of duties is a must to avoid one person or one team to gain control and have how things are updated in the code or environment. This means a separate team is responsible for development, and then a different team is responsible for testing, then a separate team for deployment, etc. Operations teams is responsible for supporting the entire development process, which includes maintaining and updating the operating environment, defining and implementing deployment process, while logging every detail of the same. Security team is responsible for identifying any vulnerabilities being introduced through this process and ensuring it doesn't reach production. If it does reach production, there's a clear trail of why it was moved over there. DevSecOps or even DevOps insists on traceability, so that it's easier to identify what change resulted in, what problem, or an incident or a security threat out there. While changes in code is traditionally what starts the process, DevSecOps starts way before that and requires other activities to complement its process, design reviews, and post-production monitoring for that matter. DevSecOps is a lot of moving parts, like the different wheels that run behind the clock to ensure it's actually it reflects accurate time. DevSecOps, as mentioned earlier, is development, security, and operations. Each stage in SDLC requires some kind of security review, but these reviews don't end at the end of SDLC. Security checks are done before and even after that. Because DevSecOps is not a process, but a cultural mindset that needs to be encouraged and adopted. Hence, every activity related to development, even if it's not actual development, must work hand in hand with security and operations. You start off with training developers in writing secure code. You surround development teams with secure development standards and frameworks to work on. And then you have security champions supporting their teams to write in secure development efforts out there. Champions are chosen because they are part of the development team. They are actually developers, but then they also have a keen interest in security. So they do know what comes through the mind of a developer. This way, they can evangelize about security within their teams. What follows are several security reviews along the path that you see over here, starting with risk analysis, architectural reviews, threat modeling, which come into picture during the design stage and planning stage. This is followed by secure code reviews, either manually or using various IDE plugins. Yes, there are a lot of plugins out there in the market, which complement the SaaS scans and help you run a quick scan locally. And then you have SAST, SCA, DAST, and IAST scans. You don't have to do all of them, but pick and choose what is applicable for your environment, that are run during coding and testing stages. These can be repeated at every stage of development, such as at build and then test or release as applicable. And you can do it several times. Then we have penetration testing done on like post-production, but not actually on the production environment. You don't want to risk that. To identify any vulnerabilities found using not found actually using previous methods. You also continuously monitor your application and like a production environment for threats using various tools such as RASP, that is runtime application security, and inviting external researchers to test your critical applications by offering a bug bounty program out there. All these offers various methods of testing your application for resilience against security. DevSecOps insists the integration of all of these along with functional testing methodologies to test your software's resilience against bugs and vulnerabilities. We talked a lot about developmental activities, but DevSecOps is development activities. But DevSecOps is not just limited to that. The third part of this whole thing, as you can see, there's dev, but then there's also ops out here. That is ops or operations. We should not be forgetting about that. All operational activities need to be reviewed. One can now build up infrastructure using code. Just yesterday, I attended the workshop for Ansible, which was really interesting. Please do check out the recording if you can. But what it obviously showed and we see out there is like now you can stand up servers or configure your environment using code itself. This makes it easier to stand up and like stand on the different nodes or servers out here in your audio environment easily, and but much more important, consistently. We now have various options available to run our software and applications. The best way to observe and watch an application work and identify security issues in its truest form is while it is running in its environment. So it is important. You also need to run checks and identify for security issues within the environment itself. Some of these issues could directly impact the application, and hence it is important to secure the environment where it's hosted. So the operations part of it is also involved in DevSecOps. You apply the same steps that we did on the dev side, apply it on the ops side, and make sure that what you are standing up, what you are running, what you are coding to run out there is monitored and tested out effectively. So does this mean can it be done using one tool? Absolutely not. While there are a lot of tools that offer mixed services, there's no one-stop shop tool that does everything for you. You have tools that help you run the whole process and tools dedicated to identify vulnerabilities using different methodologies. One thing I observed is that a lot of companies that have exclusively offered SaaS tools earlier are now jumping into the bandwagon of having SaaS tools added to, SCA tools added to the capabilities, and vice versa as well. A new thing that I observed is that SCM tools have also started offering SaaS capabilities within their repos because they have that unique advantage of having the code present over there and there itself. You can now run scans. They obviously can now run scans when developers check in their code, like as a post commit or a pre commit check over there, or like through webhooks or any of that sort. And vice versa. Like a lot of teams, like SCA tools have now started doing SaaS services as well. You have tools from open source as well as proprietary methods as out there. It's not all open source or not all proprietary. Note that no one tool fits all environments, and in some cases, no one tool fits for the company as well. In my opinion, it's not how it should be, but then it's very rare. It could happen. It's possible. I think in such cases, organizations should run a bunch of POCs again and see what fits in their environment best. I think there will be a difference of opinion among different implementers and security folks in general, which I would really love to discuss in Discord or even in the chat here. But yeah, the question was, can we have multiple SaaS tools in the same, or like multiple DAST, or like the same method but different tools in the same, and should we be running it in the same environment or not? DevSecOps tools are not restricted to just doing scans, but also to do with other activities such as reporting tools, defect tracking or management of it, environment building tools, etc. And please know that it is not restricted to just tools that you're seeing on the screen right over here. Even a simple thing such as scripts, like shell script, PowerShell, Python, for various capabilities. I have personally used a lot of PowerShell scripts too, because that's worked on a lot of Windows environment, and for some reason Python wasn't allowed. So I learned PowerShell and was able to do a lot of work, especially in terms of identifying new vulnerabilities using with the help of PowerShell and API calls. There's a large world out there, so choose wisely. So why is everyone talking about it? I don't know about all of you out here, but when I see a whole DevSecOps implementation come alive and watch as a change triggers a job, which in turn triggers a scan, which in turn gets the results and evaluates it and triages it, or maybe identify new vulnerabilities, and based on that, break a process, break a deployment if it fails certain checks. It's something magical that I feel, in my own personal opinion. Watching a lot of work being done in minutes or sometimes even in seconds is mind-blowing. DevSecOps definitely helps teams scale up big time. We all know in general, security teams have always dealt with a resource crunch, but that doesn't stop bad actors to take advantage of any vulnerability present in your environment. With more and more applications moving away from a monolithic strict structure to a more multifaceted, multi-pronged agile method, security teams need tools to buck up and catch up and make sure they have control over what is being moved out here, what changes have been done. Plus, there are only 24 hours in a day, of which 8 hours you need to sleep. I'm hoping you all get enough sleep out there. DevSecOps lets you crunch a lot of work in really short amount of time. Speeding things up, cutting down delays, and scalability are the biggest advantages of DevSecOps implementation. With global teams across different time zones and now work from home for that matter, organizations are now increasingly seeing the need for processes and frameworks that help get teams together and reduce dependencies and helping teams achieve goals through the same process. Why is everyone still talking about it? What I found in several organizations is that they have different teams working as independent verticals or businesses having their own independent silos. How does one work in such a fragmented environment? How does one manage to get some consistency while still allowing for leeway into each team or silo, which requires because their processes demand it? How do you get teams working on a single goal that they have all agreed upon, but they're unable to change the entire development process? Can we do a gradual change instead of a full-blown change in implementation? DevSecOps is able to accommodate all of these and more, no matter at what stage the organization is in terms of security maturity or how fragmented it is, how centralized the organization is. DevSecOps lets you initiate and implement security activities and lets you adapt to different functional teams out there. So you may have often heard this phrase, security is not one person's responsibility, it is everyone's responsibility. DevSecOps makes everyone participate in the process and practices this very same rule. Developers, app managers, ops team, security team, reviewers, testers, all are involved in this. One of the biggest one of the biggest wins of DevSecOps is traceability. Since processes are interconnected and automated, it is extremely easy to determine what change resulted in, what issue or problem. In terms of ITIL, in terms of ITIL tickets, which change ticket is connected to which problem ticket or incident ticket. This level of traceability also makes it easier to make people accountable and responsible for their tasks. With additional monitoring, it induces developers to be more careful while writing code and writing secure code for that matter, which prevents the pipeline from breaking in the current process. In the current project that I am working on right now, an email gets sent out at the end of the job to the entire development team. This job basically, what it does, it pulls the code, runs the scan, identifies new issues, and sends an email. If it has new issues out there of higher critical severity, it notifies that. But there's this one small section out there, not small, but pretty important section where it lists down the developer's name along with the changes and when was the change checked in, which triggered the scan, which resulted in these vulnerabilities. Now, this is possible because I'm able to pull, because it is all automated and it's pulling from this SCM tool, I'm able to pick up all the check-in, the commit details since the last build and push that info into that email as well. Now, you don't want the entire world to know if you're you're a bad developer out there or you're bad at writing secure code, right? So it kind of subtly tells them, write better code and pushes developers to, be accountable and work on writing secure code. Yes, you saw this right. DevSecOps can probably give you the moon, but it may take some time to give you Pluto. Time and again, I've seen some client expectations out there, which it's just so out there that the first thought that comes into my mind is, why? What were you thinking when you said this? But then next thing is like my mind starts turning on. How can I make this possible? That's what I think about. Yes, DevSecOps can make a lot of these far-fetched expectations come into reality, but it requires time and a lot of other factors to work before it actually is reality. Unlike other methods, a full DevSecOps implementation takes time and patience is also required. So what are the good things about DevSecOps? The first and obvious answer is automation. Automatically trigger builds scans, deployment, evaluations, approvals, etc. Automation works for all. Now, since these tasks are automated, a security team can focus on other important activities rather than just the operations of it all. As an example, with 700 apps in scope, and counting, like increasing, it's not just limited to 700 apps, it's increasing by the day. It would have been difficult for a security team of 4 to be able to monitor it regularly and all of the releases and run the scans and to figure out if approvals have to be provided or not. And again, approvals to be manual. The time it would take the team to do this would have been really long, and I've seen that case where it's taken a few days for some time, because the team is so burdened with all of these approvals pending in their queue. However, with automation, the team can actually balance out the work a bit. Recently, the team received a request to onboard and scan 30 microservices. Hear this out, 30 microservices, 2 days before production. Do not ask me what happened, why did they come up 2 days before production, but I'm pretty sure every security team member who's worked in the AppSec process out here has seen this issue come time and again, where the development team comes to you at the last moment for a sign-off. With the automation piece out here, we were able to complete all of this in just 2 hours. Yes, digest that, 2 hours, 30 new microservices onboarded on 2 tools. It was first onboarded, it's completely new. So we had to get this added to different different tools. Set up the jobs to run the scans, evaluate it, and then triage the scan results. All of this we were able to do within 2 hours. Now that is the power of automation. Earlier, I mentioned global teams being the norm, and now work from home. We have also the other challenge where we have team members distanced out there within the same city, for that matter. DevSecOps helps to create a framework which reduces dependencies to do tasks and activities. A lot of organizations have teams spread across different time zones, like Asia, UK, EMEA. In my client's case, it has usually been the security team is over here in US out there, but majority of the developers are in India and China. The security team does not have the budget, nor the capacity or the bandwidth to support all time zones. DevSecOps helps them to support developers in India and China by monitoring code being checked into late EST and early morning EST. We are also able to create portals, through which these developers could run on-demand scans. This is like for the small code that, or like their own branches that feature branches that you're working on, and they could run these scans for on-prem tools. Another big advantage was that I really like is standardization. Instead of it being a chaotic world out there, there is standardization makes it much more easier to wade through every step of the whole process. With standardization, it is easier to scale up and the process, and makes updates to it also pretty manageable. Anything more? Yes, there is, of course. Acceleration, speeding things up. Agility, another pillar of DevSecOps. Fast-paced world needs fast-paced solutions. DevSecOps offers that. With manual steps cut out and dependencies cut out, the whole process, start to finish, gets done faster and earlier. In the earlier example, 30 microservices were done in 2 hours. This wouldn't have been possible earlier. That is the speed that teams are looking for. That is the speed that organizations are looking for. With less than a week available in the whole SDLC cycle, for the whole SDLC cycle out there, security gets very less time to run its activities. A lot of security tools today have improved in terms of the time taken to scan and provide enhanced capabilities to customize your scan. And select the checks as applicable to run, them, and cut down on the scan time even further if you want to. Speed. Again, it's extremely important to DevSecOps. Traceability. With all the things connected, one can connect a change request to a problem ticket, incident ticket, out there. To give you an example, now it's not the best of the examples, I would say, but I would have to see something what I've seen as a trend happening out here in terms of traceability. In one case, the organization had dealt with a data breach due to a vulnerability found in one of their applications. And in another case, an external researcher notified the organization of a vulnerability. Now you would wonder, wait, DevSecOps is all about securing your code. How is finding a vulnerability helping your case? But hear me out. Now that obviously I can't divulge any of these details like actual vulnerability or the client. In the first case, the organization was doing regular scans and testing. The vulnerability could have been found out easily through DAST or pen testing. However, did have some DevSecOps implementation as well. However, this vulnerability determined that their choice of tools was not good for their organization and pushed them to reevaluate the tools and methods being used to test the security. Choosing the right security tools that work for you and for your organization, it's absolutely necessary. We now have reporting tools. That's what I mentioned earlier. It's not just about running scans or running security steps. It's also the part that comes after reporting. We now have reporting tools in the market that help you identify if a vulnerability was found across different tools. Someone mentioned this as defense in depth. So, for example, an SQL injection was found through a SAS tool, a DAST, and even a pen test. All of there are reporting tools which help you figure that out. Deduplication and consolidation is what is the key factor out here. Okay, so if it's all good, is there anything bad about it? Well, we haven't reached utopia yet with DevSecOps. Because there are so many pieces involved, it is not necessary it will work as one big happy group. Every organization has to deal with prioritizing their activities, and DevSecOps may not be everyone's priority, even though they understand the advantages of it. I've seen in two cases where I work. We are not able to integrate to the DevOps process yet because we are dependent on them to make certain changes and change the script as well because you're integrating the tool over there. Now, the DevOps team is not able to, they don't have the capacity or the bandwidth to provide us time and work with us to do all of these things. They do understand the advantage of such a process. It cuts down on the approvals as such, but then they also are, I've seen like DevOps teams are not exactly ready. I would say, this is in my opinion, it could have to be different out there, but not exactly ready to implement security in their process. The reason being, now security requires another team to make sure everything is working fine. It is not under DevOps team's control to now the scan servers or the scan part, they cannot control it. If anything breaks down in that process, they will have to connect with other teams. In DevOps, the DevOps team has full control on how the environment is running. With security added to the process, they find it difficult to keep a control on that. And that's one of the biggest challenges. And that's one of the biggest concerns, which is rightfully so, that they have in integrating. And that's the dependency that we're talking about. Not only that, you're also dependent on the application teams. Not everyone is the same. You have apps and you have apps that use legacy versions. Time and again, you will find teams supporting legacy apps because there have been no plan to transition them yet. For example, while a majority of the applications may be developed using Visual Studio 2019, there are still some using 2012. Or for that matter, SharePoint apps using the old framework. I've had several cases where the development team itself has, said like we are scared to do making any changes because we do not know if we deploy it, if it will break or not. It's so old, but they have to support it because it is running, it is important, and right now there is no plan to transition it to a new version out there. Even now, we do find some security tools may not integrate that easily and automatically with other tools. So it's not that everything is like you have the tools out there which will work properly or which will connect properly, which is working fine. you have to create a layer of abstraction so as to make use of it in the whole automation process, in the SecOps process for that matter. A good example of it would be Burp. Until now, did not have a CI plugin, and it was not easy at all to. It was very difficult to integrate it into an automated process, but that is possible as of today. And I just recently saw it on the Burp site that there is a CI plugin available. Then we have those legacy apps. We've all heard of those. Apps that organizations continue to use. It's critical to functionality, but it was written ages ago and there can be no changes done to it, or if like no one actually wants to do any changes on it. Assigning resources to automate such apps does not make sense. Or in some cases, it's partially part of the DevSecOps process, but then, like you may get that app being evaluated out there. You can run the scan. But since there are no changes happening, you would not want to set up webhooks or poll monitoring for changes. That will never happen. But will utilize SCM or the CI server resources, because even like a polling done is a job done is a job is running out here and it's checking continuously. So it's taking some amount of resource from the server. Trying to assign it to such legacy apps where there are no changes happening in the long run does not help, especially when you want to make sure the environment is running efficiently out here. While evaluating an automated process, you also need to check what the ROI is of getting it done. It's still bad. You need to take baby steps with DevSecOps. It is not a quick fix at all. It requires patience and tenacity to implement it all. Any DevSecOps implementations take a minimum of a year for sure. Anything less than that is probably incomplete. DevSecOps involves a lot of planning and designing first before you actually start setting up the whole solution. You need to first identify the gaps in your current process, followed by and see like what tools would be required and how do they support the process you need to implement it. Then comes coordinating with different teams to get their buy-in, and then followed by all teams implementing the required changes. This does not happen overnight. If you are able to make changes, like if you actually were going to make some changes to your process, it affects all the applications involved, all whatever is following the process out there. I heard someone say we will go and make this as a big bang change out there. If all of your applications are being scanned in this environment using a common set of libraries, which is the general standard in DevSecOps, you use a common shared script set of scripts out there to run all of your jobs. Unless you put in a specific condition and any change in this library would impact all of your applications. Getting a new application onboarded to this process may take long, not necessarily always all the time, but it may take long depending on certain factors. I find that and .NET applications usually take a lot more time to be onboarded because you need to ensure they build correctly. Now, I would say 30% of my time has been spent on resolving issues arising out of builds, because Visual Studio tends to, work differently from and like hide a lot of build errors and provides dependency on runtime. But the same cannot be said for MS Build. You cannot, when you're running an automated build step, you don't use Visual Studio for .NET applications. You use MS Build. Countless of times I've encountered a scenario where the app team says, has built the application using Visual Studio and checked in, but then since our automated process uses MS Build, command line that is, it breaks due to a variety of reasons, incorrect dependencies or missing dependencies or incorrect directory structure. Sorry. And then the CI tool itself is not up to mark at times. A lot of organizations that start using start the CI process start using it with Jenkins because it's free and open source, and it's pretty popular as well. But you have other tools, CI tools in the market as now. However, the past year, I've literally been zonked out due to the number of bugs in Jenkins and its plugins. As a result of which, I had to implement several dirty workaround to tasks which I wanted to get done. But I could not do it because of the bugs in there. A lot of plugins on Jenkins are no longer being maintained or supported. That does not mean it's completely bad. It is very useful. It's definitely helpful. Jenkins still does a lot of work out there, and but then other tools also have its own limitations. I personally have worked on Jenkins. I've just barely used a little bit of TeamCity and GitLab. Sorry, yeah, but I can't comment on that because I have not extensively used it as I have done with Jenkins out here. Finally, the worst part. Developers themselves can be deviant little tricksters. Sorry, devs, if there are any out here in the audience, but there's a very, very, very small fraction of it. There have been times when I've had to escalate it, asking them why they haven't notified of a change, or sometimes they actually skip processes, but we are able to catch them out. Or like in the earlier cases where I mentioned 2 days before prod go live, or a new application service coming out there. It has to be given on just because everything is fast doesn't mean it happens in quick seconds out there. We also, like, especially for a new application, we still need time. There's still a human involved in this whole process to get things done. So we still need time a bit, and sometimes developers make it a little bit difficult out here. The other thing is that tools do not have a level of maturity to do everything that is needed. Every tool has its limitation on what it can and cannot do, especially in an automated process. Though that area is declining, to give you an example, Jenkins cannot probably allow conditional parameterization. What do I mean by that is, let's say, depending on what you select in one dropdown, the values in the other dropdown chain. It's not currently possible in Jenkins as of now. Maybe there are some other plugins which offer workarounds, but not the actual requirement. And finally, the biggest headache that any security team has to deal with: false positives. I have this one app which is part of the whole automation process, which always throws up 350 plus critical vulnerabilities, all of them being false positives. Every time I've triaged, it's all been false positives, even with a tiny change in, let's say, the connection parameters. I've yet to determine what's going on wrong out there. Why does it keep coming up? And it's just this one particular app. It doesn't happen with all apps. But I don't think anyone has come up with a decent solution of how to deal with false positives. Like, we have workarounds. We do have, like, don't check for certain things, or like by default mark these as a false positive or something of that sort, which you have to take. The second part, I would say, be careful with that. But if you have any good ideas, I would definitely like to discuss that in the Discord or in this chat. Well then, do we still need this? Yes. And yes, we still need this. You still need DevSecOps. It really makes work way more simple and streamlined. Hope this presentation actually, gives you the benefit of doubt over there, and helps you understand the nitty-grittiness of whole DevSecOps implementations. There's still a lot more to talk about in terms of OPSEC, right? If you'd observe, I was talking more on the development part, but then that's a whole new topic. That's a whole other discussion out there. And that's something that I'm also learning as of now. I'm still picking up a lot more things on that part. But yeah, that's about it for my presentation. And oops. If you want to connect with me, use my LinkedIn and Twitter. I'm still trying to use it a little bit. Let me know if you have any questions.